And Mike, I forgot about that part. Now we're official and ready to go. So now we're recording. I think I met you guys probably 8 months ago here in California, and they have some great products that are coming out and have been testing with our patients here in Orange County that I know that is in this presentation. So you'll be getting a little more information soon. Their test lab is just up the street in Calabasas, which is only about 40 miles, but like 2 hours away. But I was fortunate enough to be able to go up there and see the process. And that was really exciting for me. Thank you. And our patient that's testing one of their robots drove us up in her, I don't know what you would call it. It's adjusted for her, the truck.
Converted Chevy Silverado with a full lift platform and a swing going side. Yeah.
Yeah, she's very proud of it. So it's really exciting to have her drive us up there, and then to see everything that Mike and Carrie and his team are working on. So I'll just turn it over to you, Mike, and he is going to have some time at the end for questions and answers. So if you'd like to put anything in the chat box, feel free. I'll make sure that everything is addressed. So thanks, Mike, for joining us. I'm excited to see your presentation today.
Right. No, thank you. Thank you all for taking the time. And so I'll start off. Can everyone see the screen? Should say preview of assistive robots. Is that coming up? Yep. Okay, great. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you everything but the robot that we're working on, because we're pre-market, but we're going to provide a lot of information on what our mission is, why this technology is coming available and how we're using it, and get pretty concrete on what the robot does. We just won't show you the actual model. For anyone after having seen the presentation, if you're interested in learning more, we're happy to do a one-on-one, and we can show you the videos of the robot, the product overviews and everything else. We're just not broadcasting it where it's getting shared because we haven't released the product. But anyone here that's in the network, we have both, we can follow up with you, send you some links. And also we have surveys that we're using to recruit for pilot users, and those you're able to share, and they have an NDA embedded in it. So I think, well, feel free to ask as many questions as you have, and I think you'll find this useful. And then if you're curious, we can do the whole thing too. So what I want to jump over to is, I'm going to try to shrink this down, is what we're currently in. If you're in the, put a plug in so far, is if you're in the Southern California area, we are actively testing these robots that we're about to talk about now. And so if you have folks that sort of sound like they fit the need set that we're addressing, definitely feel free to reach out to us. We're then going to be moving on to other regions. Bay Area is in the list. Ironically, Michigan, we have a really interesting partnership that we're developing with community programs with University of Michigan Flint and some of the senior living providers out there. And so even if you're not in Southern California, you may be in a neck of the woods that we have other partners. And so just feel free to reach out on that as well. What Labrador is, I know a lot of you are coming into this without much background. We are a robotics startup. We sort of call ourselves the SpaceX of service robots, and the fact that there's been robots around for a while. Don't think of your fact like you're the ones that, the ones with arms that are making the cars at the assembly line, but robots that are in warehouses, what Amazon uses. Some of you will see them in hospitals doing delivery functions. They've been there for over 30 years. What we're doing is basically taking that technology and blowing it up and making it cost at least 1/10 the price. And by doing that, now instead of being something that only like a large hospital system could afford to have in their building, we want to get it so that we can actually put robots in people's homes and have one-on-one usage, particularly with this idea of supporting assistive applications. Folks have chronic pain or impaired mobility in some regard, helping them do more, live more independently, or helping extend the impact of their caregivers. So it's the economics of this, of both the technologies that are becoming available, meaning that we can put these sorts of robots in the homes, and it's what we're putting in pilots now, and the technology being more robust because it's actually more complex to work in a home than it is in a factory or places like that. My background and from my other founders, I've been in robotics for over 20 years. So I started off with Lego, which really impresses 5-year-olds when I tell them that. And back in 1998, I launched a product line called Lego Mindstorms. And that's basically putting motors, sensors, and computer processors into Lego bricks that let kids build and program robots that do what they want. And it launched and it did really well. It's actually still Lego's #1 selling product of all time. And it's on the market. I think we're now there. This is the 23rd year that it's out there. So I've been around robotics for a while. It was an exciting introduction. But what we learned about that is how do you make these things very reliable? How do you make them very safe? And from there, I worked on a product line called Mint. And if any of you, some people have it. It's a robotic Swiffer robot that would dust and wet mop your floors. And we launched that in 2010, and we got acquired by iRobot, the people that make Roomba. And so now it's still on the market. Now it's called Brava, so it rhymes with Roomba. So if you go into Bed Bath Beyond or Best Buy and you see the square robot, that's something my partner and I invented. And again, what we were doing there is how to make something very reliable. It's a systematic way of cleaning your floors. You put a Swiffer cloth or a microfiber on, and it'll dry dust or wet mop your floors, go all the way back and forth, track where it cleans, go around the edge of the kitchen counter, come back, do all the corners, and park right where it started. And the reason that's important is because that's enabling robots to do things that are getting more complex, which means that we can do another step of it. So we got acquired in 2012 by iRobot. And so now you can buy Mint, which is now called Brava. But also, if you buy a Roomba today that costs about $400 or more, it cleans like Mint. It actually goes straight back and forth. It'll vacuum half the room if it needs to recharge. It'll park itself, recharge, and pick up where it left off. And that technology came out of that startup. So we've had a lot of experience. I personally have shipped like millions of robots into homes, and understanding what that means. Like, how do you make something that's both very low cost, but very reliable? And the technologies that enable that, if you look at like what's on Roomba today, it was really because the iPhone came out. It had low cost, sensors. It had cameras that cost a few dollars, processors, the gyro, like the ability for you to pan and tilt your screen like this on the phone actually is what unlocked the personal robotics market, because it meant that we could track like when we turn and everything. So what we're looking at now is that technology, which is in millions and millions of robots in homes today, there's a new generation of technology coming. And that's really from these AR headsets and the new iPhones, which, when kids are playing Pokemon and they see a digital character jump up on a park bench and it looks like it's really there, they're basically visually tracking the real world and they're superimposing fake things in it. Well, if you do that with robots, you can actually move real things in the real world, and you can do it for what to the market of industrial robots is for a very low cost. So what we're trying to do is build this new category of robots that are taller than your 3.5-inch Roomba. They weigh more and they can do more, but they can operate safely within your home. So that's our mission here. And the intersection for this is really helping people live more independently. That's where we see the big need. My personal experience was watching my mom progress through this, and she's still around. She's 90 and still living at home and getting care into the home. But just watching her progression from going from having difficulty walking to starting to use a cane in her late 70s, then using a walker, and then eventually needing to go into a wheelchair. And what that crossover, that sort of last fall, click from going from walker to wheelchair, was she didn't have a fall, she didn't have a stroke or any like significant, like major acute, event. She had a blood clot, and they caught it early. It was causing swelling. The doctor caught it, and she went into the hospital, and the hospital care was just wonderful, perfect. She couldn't ask for any more. They got rid of the blood clot, and then they put her into rehab and physical therapy to get her to that minimal level of mobility to transfer herself. And that was like wonderful, like state of the art, great care. Then she gets discharged to home, and all of a sudden it was like 1930s. It was like, it's us pretty much. And like moving a bed down to the dining room, trying to sort of cobble together what's her needs and everything. And then just understanding how the system worked. Like she needs, like they were saying, well, she really needs a hospital bed. Like, well, why didn't you prescribe that before you discharge her? Instead, let's go to the, now we have to have an appointment and go to the doctor. That takes a while to get and all those things. But at the end, it was sort of a rude awakening about what the system covers and what it doesn't. And what, like, we basically pay for private duty care to come in to help her transfer in the morning and also resituate at night. And just having somebody, because they're minimal charges, that ends up being like $72,000 a year for someone. And so I know a lot of you are experts on this, but it was for someone that's not in that space, it was sort of a shock. And now 10 years, a few years later, I know we're talking about technology and we're passionate about robotics, but at the same time, I've got 4 members of my family that are in different stages of need. I'm the youngest of 6 in a family with aunts and uncles and parents still around. And we understand these are really complex personal issues for folks about where they want to stay, where they can. I've got a family member right now in skilled nursing that we're trying to discharge into the right place so that they can progress. So we understand that this is a really complex issue, that these are real people involved, and there's real people from the caregivers involved. And this robot is not going to fix everything that we're working on, but we think we can make the balance of things better for the ones that we can match. So that's where we come from on this. The big thing that, and this is something you're probably more familiar than I was when we started, was this, my experience wasn't unique. And that when we started, putting these numbers together to tell folks in Silicon Valley why there's a market here for helping people live more independently, the demographics sort of are scary. That we've had the fastest growing population in our society is 85 plus. And it grows at about almost 4% a year for the last several years. At the same time, the population 18 to 65 is flat. It's growing at 0.3%, and that's the labor force, and also it's the people that have the active incomes to pay for the services for folks that are retired or need help. And so you go, well, that's not good. Where do we do that? And at the same time, I remember my grandmother in the 1980s being in a nursing home and like, wow, we must have a lot more of these now because there's so many more seniors, and especially folks that have lived really long. And then you look and like, we're losing 1% of skilled nursing beds a year. How is that working? How do we grow 4% one split and then you lose 1% at the other? And the answer is that we're just pushing the care down. The way that we're dealing with the acute levels of need of an aging population is to take the most expensive care and ration it as briefly as we can and move them out to the next level. So if you're going to be in skilled nursing, we want to discharge you. We'll discharge you into assisted living, or we'll discharge you into the home. And so where you see that slack pick up is if you take like the number of unpaid caregivers, that's now up to 53 million people, and it's been growing at 4%. It's growing at the same rate as the aging population. And we've been doing this for 20 years. And now what's going to happen is we have another 20 years in front of us of this. And we get the same thing when we go into assisted living and starting doing visits there. One of the things, like you go to the dining room and in the hallway, you'd see, or either in a coat room or the hallway, there'd be a line of walkers parked outside, because what happens is someone in a walker comes to the dining room, they roll in, and they have someone then takes, like a valet, takes that walker out of the dining room and puts it in a coat room or in the hallway so that it's not a fall hazard, it isn't cluttering the space. And then they bring it back when they need it. And you see all the people, and every operator we met said, 10 years ago, we didn't have all these walkers here. It was just a couple. And so even in their seeing it, so in the space of assisted living, the trend is the level of need is more acute. It's either that the seniors coming in are waiting longer to go into those facilities, or they're being discharged earlier, that they're a population that would have been in skilled nursing longer or in a longer term care setting. So the part is that we have a big need. And what's ironic is that the US is a relatively young population compared to Europe. Like some of those countries, the aging is more extreme. And then you go to Japan, or it's 2x of our issue. And so again, we're looking at the next 20 years. We have to basically we're basically going to be doing more. We have a higher burden, people living longer. And like my mom, living a lot longer at different levels of impairment than my grandmother ever did. And we got to figure out, how do we support them? And this was all before COVID. So this was all before everything with people, one is the reluctance to move into aggregate care now, between telemedicine really pushing care into the home so that my mom can now get that prescription for the hospital bed without actually having to go and get crammed into her caregiver's car for a visit and have a session and just get it prescribed, to where Medicaid Advantage is starting to pay for certain types of home care services. So I think the whole pendulum is going to swing to the home even more. But where the push is on that is it's really on the family caregivers and on the private pay that really have to pick that up, or it's on these PACE programs or other areas that are doing, the government subsidized area function. So we just see that this isn't, it's, from the investors, it's a market opportunity. For us, it's like, this is a really painful need for things to start accelerating on. And so what we're working on, the company's called Labrador, and the product we're doing really is a physical assistant for daily activities. So there's lots of stuff with digital helps and apps and things you can do. We physically move things for people that have difficulty or pain moving things themselves. The most common sense analogy is, when I was watching my mom start using a cane and walker, I realized that her hands are becoming her extra pair of legs. That's part of her mobility system. And even simple things. And the irony was, my dad would be sitting watching the TV, and she was the one using the walker and cane first, and she'd be the one carrying the coffee or other stuff back and forth to him. And just the risk of falling, the strain, the pain of that, it's like, there's got to be a better way. And then you take sort of other tasks. You take things like doing the laundry, that someone can't get to the point of carrying that load. And it's not just if it's using a walker or cane. Could be that you have arthritis or back pain, and we find early onset, we find folks in their 40s and 50s with this issue, where it physically is hard to do these tasks that a lot of us take for granted. And the point is, if you can help people move things, and that's bring them water, bring them their medication, help them do their laundry, help them set the table, help them, a term that we use with that we hear from our own people in the pilot studies, conserve their energy when they want to bank it, and then use it when they have the critical need. All those things are really important to managing whatever that sort of state of disease or impairment or pain that you're dealing with. And with that, we want to try to do it at a breakthrough low cost, and starting at something about $100 a month. Can we make robots affordable to somebody on a subscription, on a service that could be at that price point that we go through there? So the areas of focus are chronic pain. That's a massive one, especially high impact pain that's interfering with folks with their daily activities. Impaired mobility, whether you're using a walker, wheelchair, or cane, that could be a permanent or a progressive situation, but also post-acute rehab. So people being discharged, from rehab or from surgery, and in some sort of recovery period, as well as home health as we look at that. And how this works, so this is like the closest view of what we're going to show you what the robot does, is if you signed up for our pilot study today, and you use the product, we show up, and what we do is we bring this robot, it's about the size of a good sized kitchen cart, and we train it on different locations. In robotics, we call these waypoints, but to users, we just call them bus stops. And the bus stops are the places you want it to go. And you can think about it as, imagine you have a side table that can move anywhere in your house. And let's say I want to set the table. Well, I could tell the robot to go over to the kitchen counter by the fridge, or by, we're in position 4 here on that map. And our robot autonomously navigates. It's like a self-driving car. It'll drive itself to that part and park right in the position it's trained. It actually goes up and down, so it raises to match the surface that you're next to. And you could put like the food, the plates, the dinnerware, the drinks, and then say, hey, go to the dining table. And the robot will now drive over and park next to you where you want it. And you can use it like a serving cart. Same thing, like go to the laundry room and or where your washer dryer is, and then go over to the dresser or to your closet where you keep your clothes. And so it's basically this physical device for helping someone, even someone who's ambulatory, still do all these activities and move things from place to place. It also is a great tool because it has storage to keep items on it. So if you want to keep your Kleenex, your iPhone charge, your medication, your extra pair of glasses, whatever you have, think of it as the sort of table that moves around with you, always to keep that within reach and help you sort of organize things. When we first did these studies and we were looking at folks that were as they were aging and had impaired mobility, anecdotally, we went into their homes, and the less mobile they were, the bigger piles of stuff they had around their chairs. They were using fewer and fewer spots where they were basically sitting or sleeping, and they had clusters of things all around there so that it was in reach. Because someone is settled in and they're having a back spasm, or they're going to sleep on the recliner because they're using their CPAP machine and they're having trouble breathing and they need to be upright. And all this stuff then starts becoming within reach. And where the observation was, why don't we just always move that? It actually, is one of Tara's clients said, it moves your world with you, basically, was the idea. So all these activities, if you look at them, these are all instrumental activities of daily living. They're not the core ADLs. We're not talking about a robot that's going to take somebody, lift them out of bed, do toiletering, doing bathing, doing transferring, those tasks. And to be honest, I think it's a really, really long time before robots are at that point that we can afford them in the home. We don't have C3PO yet. Even Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos don't have C3PO yet. Like if you go to the Amazon warehouse, the robots pretty much bring the shelf to the pick and place. So every time there's you order something like a box of Cheetos or something, that's a robot being dispatched. It lifts the entire shelf, drives it over, and it's a human that's actually taking that bag or taking that item and putting it in the box. And as I was talking to a senior living provider, if Amazon isn't getting this robot yet, grandma's not getting it yet. So in terms of like all the science fiction we see and everything else, we don't have humanoid robots. And so the role of caregivers in that human touch is going to be secure for a really long time. But what we do have is robots that are more like R2-D2, more, sort of assistants that could be doing some of these lower skill tasks that would free up the caregiver's time, or let them have an impact for the hours that they're not there, as well as just let people do the things themselves that are doing this. And again, the questions that we usually get here are like, well, what do you have to command it? Well, it works with anything. So if you have Alexa, you could just use Alexa and command it by voice. If you have a tablet or an iPhone, you can just press a button and it'll go from one location to the other. And we'll show you an example of that. So when you do all that, basically, then things open up. Think that like once you can sort of say, hey, we have this digital platform that also moves things, and I want to help people remember to take their diabetes medicine at the right schedule, or get their blood glucose readings in too. Well, we fit not just, and it's not just an app that could go up. It's the robot could physically come to you, park next to you, and say, hey, do you want to take your medication? Or just have your medication sitting there as a physical reminder. And we hear this from so many folks, even folks that they're not having cognitive issue. It's just that we were talking to a gentleman that's a wounded warrior, Afghan vet with spinal injury. What really powerful story of his recovery, and he does competitive archery now. And he says, I've got the app, I've got a caregiver, and like every day it goes off and it says it's time to take my pills. And I forget, I get distracted by something else. And so this whole idea of just having something that physically brings something to you. Same thing with hydration, like how core fundamental that is to, to keeping people healthy. And it's the reason why in skilled nursing and in assisted living, they have hydration carts that go out in the morning and go out in the afternoon to keep the population hydrated. Well, have I could explain our robot in a second, which is not a great positioning, but it could get you a beer if you want it out of the refrigerator. So have it go and bring you a cold drink and remind people and encourage them to use it. Then because of that, we then have all these other benefits. Like imagine having a telehealth session where you have a robot that actually can track where you are, and your physical therapist or your doctor can have a session with you, and it's zooming in right on you, and it's there, you're able to do really high fidelity remote health, and you're not dealing with someone that's trying to find where did they put their iPad, or trying to hold up and see things as they go on. Doing things like, because the sensors we have on the robot, analyzing how somebody's walking, like saying, hey, mom isn't walking quite as stable this day. Maybe you want to check in on her. Those sensors all exist. And the point is, if we can put them in a way that feels private for people, that they have control over that information, but is in this trusted product that they can use, it just gives us a lot more information on things like that. So what this is what this is one of the things that I won't say it was surprising, but it was really encouraging when we were looking at the data. One of the people that we placed the pilot robot with was a woman in her 40s, but with advanced stage Parkinson's. And this sort of re-echoed a couple of things that we had already learned, plus taught us some more. One is, I would say 90% of the people that we work with, their condition is not flat. It's variable. So they have good days and they have bad days. They're better in they feel unstable in the morning. They feel okay in the afternoon. They take their meds and it's night. They don't want to get out of bed because they don't feel like they've got they're 100%. Or we have folks that were going to work and they're driving or using a scooter, and sometimes they have episodes of back pain and spasms that they're just flat on their back and they're trying to work through it. So one thing that we see is, what you're seeing on this is, the top chart was the number of times that they're using the robot, the bus stops she's sending to the robot to each day. And some days she's using it a lot, like 9 or 13 times. Other days it's averaging around 3 or 1. And overall, she's still over 100 times a month, which is actually a lot, for someone. Sometimes there's 0 because she forgot to charge it, and we don't have self-charging in the pilots yet. So that'll get fixed once we put that out there. But the big question we were asking Wendy, so sometimes why do you use it like 9 and 13 times on some days and just only a couple on the others? And I was wondering, maybe that's the day when her caregiver's not there, or maybe that's the day she's trying to do certain tasks on her own. And she says, well, the spikes are pretty much my on days, and the lows are my off days. And for those of you dealing with folks with Parkinson's, her level was, an on day, she could articulate a word about maybe 1 to 2 words every 5 seconds. On an off day, she struggles to get a word out in 15 seconds. An on day, she can control her wheelchair, with the joystick, and manipulate things, and even touch her Apple Watch or touch things on her iPad. An off day is when the caregiver puts her down on a mat, in a comfortable position with a pillow, where she can watch TV, has the robot next to her to reach things, and has a blanket and water, and she has to wait till the next shift of the caregiver several hours later to come, because she doesn't have the motor control activity to do anything else. And I was asking her, well, does your doctor ask you to track your on and off days? She goes, yes, and it's really hard to sort of figure out how to do it and to sort of remember to do it. And their caregiver piped up and she said, I'd love to know this, because I'm her primary caregiver. I do the 4-hour day shift from Monday to Thursday, but I would love to know, how would her long weekend go? And what am I coming into when I'm there on Monday again? Or is she having some adverse effect from the medication or something else going on? So just this sort of need that we could track the activity of somebody because they're using the robot and what they're doing was just really insightful for us. So we started placing robots in the end of February with as the COVID spike in the LA area was starting to come down. And these are some of the folks that were in the study. Again, we have folks that have MS, a guy that's recovering from stroke, Wendy that's got long-term with needs with multiple sclerosis, or sorry, with Parkinson's, as well as older folks that have rheumatoid arthritis and other issues or in the mix. And we really felt like we're hitting on something that they felt that's just not served in this market. One is like just when we would make the first contact with people, they'd find out about our survey or a request that we put out for participants on Facebook or Craigslist. And we had people joining their interviews, their Zoom calls with their physical therapist or caregivers. They actually set the appointment so their physical therapist would be on for an hour with us. They would write notes to us about all the things that they needed help with that day before they got the robot, on like how many times they could have used it to do something. And then after it, what we were saying is that we asked people rated on a 1 to 10 scale of how you would recommend it to folks. And we're pretty much consistently getting 10 out of 10. We get texts from people saying like a month after we took the robot back out at the end of the study. Wow, I missed my robot, making me feel guilty. As well as like driving, in one of the person's cases, driving actually 65 miles each way and bringing their physical therapist to see the product and give us their feedback. So we're not trying to pat ourselves on the back as much as say that we really think that there's a lot more we could be doing in society to help people live independently. That they're just, when we look at the other things that we're putting technology against, we should be putting technology against this too, as we do this. And the economics of this, like what the insurance companies and the other providers want to get at is, we're not a replacement of a human caregiver. There's just nothing close to that, both on the physical capability of a person, but also on the emotional human touch. So we're not trying to basically replace caregivers. What we are trying to do is deal with the shortage of qualified caregivers, and also for the ones who are really passionate about it, to really make their job as best as possible too. So they're focusing on those high touch needs. And what can we do to extend the impact so that one person can care for more individuals? So again, what we look at this is sort of like, it's a dry word, but point of care automation is that the benefit of the robot is that it can be there for 24/7. It's always there. It's on demand use. And we can amortize that if we get into mass production to about starting around $100 per month. And any of you that if you're in the business or you have like relatives like I do receiving non-medical home care, it's $100 per visit for doing that. And so the goal is, how can we basically balance that and make it more affordable, both for people that are private pay, but also for the systems like the PACE programs and others that are on disability or other benefits to basically have. And the thing is that we want to do both. We want to improve the quality of life for individuals to give folks more control, but also improve the economics so that it makes sense for the system to pay for this. So our progress to date is, we believe we're the first company to actually deploy fully autonomous commercial grade robots into homes like this. It just has you'll see other products on the market. Most of them are what I call 20-year research projects. They're trying to study something, but they're not able to actually deploy something as a solution. We've run the robot a lot. It's gone, I think we're probably going to approach 100 kilometers of the robot driving on its own during all the testing and the placements. But so far, since February, we're in about 150 cumulative days in homes without, what they say in robotics, without human in the loop. If this was a self-driving car, there's nobody on the driver's seat ready to grab the wheel. The robot operates on its own. The user can tell it to stop, but it's all running on its own and designed to sort of self-navigate and things. And the bigger issues we have is like the pets messing with the robot, cats riding it. Cats, like if you've seen the cat Roomba videos, I've got a nice video of a cat just riding the robot and being transferred from one location to the other. One of the people, she has 2 dogs. One of the dog is a border collie, and it herds the robot like it's a sheep. It basically blocks it and learns that if it steps here, the robot knows to stop, those sorts of things. So we have to get around this cat and dog conspiracy sort of thing, to the point where we may even have like the person could record their voice and tell the dog to move when it does that. And again, this number of 100 times each pilot user uses the robot or commands it per month has been really encouraging. And we really try to be good about that. I don't ping somebody. If I don't see them use it, I'll stay quiet on it. And then I see a spike again, they come back and use it. So we think that we're becoming part of people's routines, which means that we have access to a lot of this activity and can be a great data platform. And again, we're working on this way of how can we price it, where, the majority of folks could afford it for about $100 before we get into insurance, before we get into assistive programs and things like that. I'll try to go brief on our technology and where this really exists. Is that just one way to think about it? If you get a Roomba, again, the company I used to work for with iRobot, that product, Roomba, is going to cost you something about $10, $20, up to $30 a month, depending on the model you're getting and how hard you're using it. And it was ironic, after I did this chart, iRobot actually came out with a subscription model. So now you can pretty much pay per month for a Roomba. I think it's $29. And it's no risk if it breaks or anything, it's under warranty. And you sign up for, I think, at least 2-year period, and then you can get into upgrades later. If you go into the robots that are in the warehouses, if you're in some of the places where they're starting to use them to clean floors in grocery stores or check the aisles for what's on the shelf, those robots are in the thousands of dollars. And a robot that costs $1,000 a month is just not economical to be in a house. No, on top of it, they're not really designed to operate in homes. So ours is really designed to go over, this is what, again, if you follow up with this, we can show you the videos of it going over the carpets and taking the narrow turns and things like that. So what Labrador is really trying to do is the sort of new generation of robots that are heavy lifting, but they are much more affordable as they do it. And then our target users are folks like, this is Trisha. So I would say when I talk to them, they are fighting to maintain their daily independence. There's an attitude there about like, I really want to be able to do more, or I really want to have control over these things. And this is what your product is doing for me. So that's really critical to our mission, is we're a tool for them to have more independence, and a tool for the caregivers to have more impact as we do it. And there's a massive underserved need. Basically, we have 54 million Americans suffer arthritis. There's CDC, according to CDC, is almost 20 million Americans have a high impact chronic pain. That's defined as you have pain that's occurring for the last 6 months, for nearly all of the last 6 months, or almost every day, where it's interrupting or interfering with your daily activities. It's a high level of pain. We have 20 million people of folks with different diseases that impact mobility or just stamina, like COPD, MS, Parkinson's. 22 million people use mobility aids, like walker, wheelchair, cane, and about 53 million people are unpaid caregivers. What we see sort of this fit is, it's not like, hey, it's for people with MS or people with cerebral palsy. It's really that we look at this as some sort of assessment on their like from a standard for occupational therapy, that they're at a certain progression. So someone who has just a diagnosis, I've been diagnosed that I have arthritis, but it's in its early stages, that's not really the target. Same way, we were talking with, I had a person that was in the recruiting for the study, and they said, oh, my mom would really be able to use this. And he was describing, and she checked all the boxes. But unfortunately, she was on oxygen, and she's got a 35-foot tube that goes to a central machine in the house. It's not one of the rolling sort of machines or oxygen tank. It's a tube that plugs in, and it's like, that's, on product version 1.0, that's too hard for us to deal with, like how to detect something as thin as that tube and work around it. Or we had a person that was with Parkinson's, and he was lined up to be in the study, but unfortunately had a poor medication reaction and had to go into skilled nursing. And that puts them out of the reach. So it's really this band of folks that once they start with that onset of restricted motion, like where lifting, carrying, energy level of activity is being impacted, even if they're just using, they don't even have to be using a cane, actually. It could be somebody with arthritis that is just starting to be impacted by those issues, to points where folks have more significant disruption of their mobility and things like that. So with that, I'll show a couple of quick videos that sort of give you some background. First, this will be the video of like the robot, what the robot actually sees. So this is the technology, that the stuff that's being put on your iPhone and on tablets and others lets us do. So the left view is a view of the home just with a regular camera. The right view is what the robot can see. And we basically get from vision, we get this radar-like image. We can see the obstacles. And that green line is that path that the robot's trying to follow, and it adapts that. So this is something that Roomba and those products don't have. They don't actually see the world like this. And now that self-driving cars have this technology, but now we're getting to the point where we can have this in the home. So if you moved the chair and it was in the way, or a dog was sitting someplace, we can safely maneuver and drive around, or stop when, let's say, a person is walking out of the kitchen and we want to give them space to come around. So that's really this ability to see the world in 3D for low cost is really changing things. And we're able to navigate. The other part is you can start identifying things. Like we could identify, okay, like there's a person, and start looking at how they're walking, or there's a dog. Therefore, we know that dog's a temporary object, and this is where the AI comes in. That we start actually learning to, like, say we're not gonna, we'll say the wall is there and we know we need to drive around it. The dog might move, so we'll be able to differentiate that. But this simply wasn't available 15 years ago for most products, and definitely not affordable until like the last couple of years. And so this is why you're going to see robots that are now taller than Roomba start being able to be built and made and go into the home, because we can actually have this type of sensor information onto it. The other two videos, I'll show you one, which is like, this will get into the, when someone is in the pilot study for us, what we do is we'll have an interview with them and basically explain the product. And so it's like a calibration session where they're learning about if they want to be in the study, and we show them stuff. This is one of the people that ended up being in the study. She has the robot right now, and I was introducing how you can control it. So so let's see if we can keep them in different spots. Let me see if I can get to the right setting.
In my house, and
I'll get to that. And I'll just send, we have to figure what's the command for it. Alexa, ask Lab 1 to go to the dining room.
Okay, going to the dining room now.
Sweet.
Yeah, so basically it does that. So it's on the same, it's because this is a Fire tablet, it's got Alexa built in. And then what once this, we're speeding this thing up, but in a little bit. So, so basically what that was demoing there was, I'll show it. I'll let her explain.
Ask.
It actually is going to send the robot off to the dining room, I think. So so what was your reaction to that?
Yay. I love and it took Jamie a bit to get used to coming into the bedroom, and ours, asking it to turn on the bedroom lights. Now he's can just lay in bed and command the lights, and so he warmed up to that one pretty quickly.
Yeah. So then what happens is that then like robot's actually now driving here, and it comes up and it shows where it's going to go. It's traveling, and then it'll tell you when it gets there. And stuff.
Oh, I like it. Oh, I like it.
So what's nice about it? Is it the voice? Is it the interface? Is it the whole thing, or what's
it's just one less thing for me. I have to go turn a light. Walking across the room to turn a light on is
okay.
That's a lot of effort. I don't think that's the other thing people don't understand. I mean, my sister's in a wheelchair, and the inconvenience with that is just more obvious. But for me, who I'm mobile, but the effort it takes to move across the room, it's a lot of effort, and it gets exhausting throughout the day to do things. And there's days where I try to clean and I'm just exhausted.
Right.
And what I think should be half hour, 45 minutes to do my kitchen, dishes and wipe everything down and clean it up, literally takes more of an hour and a half. Just
right. So she's in with multiple sclerosis, and she's mobile, but as she's saying, it's a tough mobile. And her sister is actually in a wheelchair and has a different set of issues, tied to that. And also one person likes using Alexa, the other person, they don't want it in their house. which is fine. That's why we provide multiple options for whether you're pressing a tablet or using the voice or both. But before I finish on this, we're definitely gonna leave time for everybody to ask questions. This is a 90-second clip from one of the first pilot user after the end of their 5 weeks of using the robot. What's the value of it? If someone says, I think we had this question early on when you were talking, like, why not just ask Angel, your husband, to do that for you? What is the product doing for you?
Because independence is what's important. Being able to go in the kitchen and grab your coffee, get some food, and not be able to carry it back to your desk or whatever you have is a pain. And then have to ask someone when he's on a call or he's working at home to interrupt them. And just the general idea that you can't do this.
Right, okay.
And so now you can.
Great,
You
okay.
can load everything up and be done and go about your day and do everything you want.
Right, great. And then just compared to before you had, when you saw the videos versus now that you've had it for 5 weeks, is it harder to use than you thought? Is it the same or is it easier to use? What was your experience with it?
It's so easy to use it.
Okay,
Absolutely easy. There's something to it.
okay,
You just punch in what you want and you're there.
okay,
It's done easy.
okay. And then just like one final question, what was something you ended up using for that you didn't think of in the beginning? Just like,
Most everything.
okay.
But when my Instacart came, my groceries came, and to be able to, they've set them in the door and to be able to put them on the robot and have them go to the kitchen, unload it, have it come back, load some more. I wasn't having to carry or figure out how to do that.
Great.
I had it right here.
Cool. So that's, I'm going to stop sharing at that point because I know we have some questions in chat and I want to let Tara and others. So that's sort of the overview. And again, we're happy if you're more interested, we can show you the robot, get in the details of the study, whether you're in the Southern California or you're in one of the potential areas of the country that we're going to next, but happy to answer questions or things that you have at this point.
I saw we do have one in the chat box about command training. How long does it take for the robot to understand the commands from the user or caregiver? And can the robot get commands from a smartphone or a link from a family caregiver not at home?
Yeah, so you can command it from most anything. Like what's funny is if you use Slack, we actually, as the developers, use Slack to chat with the robot. So we can say go here or go there or look at. So pretty much, yeah, it's the app. It's like a smart light. It doesn't really matter what the interface is. You could use Alexa. We have a tablet that has all the destinations loaded on it, and that's what we're using in the pilots. And then we'll have pretty soon a smart app on the phone. So each location is basically just a button that you need to click or a word that you say. And then the training really is, if it's the training is more about those routes that I was showing. So currently we go in and we were, because of COVID, we were just dropping the robot in the door, and then all the training was being done remotely by one of our engineers 60 miles away. And so we go in, it takes us a couple hours currently because nothing's been optimized for speed, but we talk ahead of time to people about what are the spots you want to have the robot. We set up the first couple and then they get used to it and they go, oh, I forgot, I really wanted it to go to that place because that's where we store the laundry. And so then basically we don't have to come back in the house. We just get their permission, turn the robot on, train it on a couple more spots, and we add to it. So it can always be updated as well.
Well, I will invite anyone else who has a question to unmute and ask it. I see that Robin was asking if she could get a copy of your slides.
Yeah, we'll post those. I'll probably share those for you, Tara, and I desensitize them, so there's nothing in there that's got secrets of the robot on there. But yeah, we can we'll do that. And then again, we have we do have a link to a survey that has. In the survey, it has a little NDA to say, hey, do you agree to keep this confidential? And then you can actually see the video of the robot. So we could send you the survey, as well as if you have clients or folks that you may think would be interested, or other organizations.
That's great. And I see that Kerry put his information there. Kerry Huffman, he's in the top right on my screen. He works with Labrador Systems. So if you're interested in seeing more, send him that email at that address there. And will you apply for Medicare approval
Sure.
in certain medical conditions?
Yeah, definitely. And this is the complexity of us learning like what the system pays for and what doesn't, and what's the hurdle for that. So the first goal is to work for folks that where we can price it and it can be afforded for out of pocket. So it is going to be more, it's not the super rich, but it is more affluent, or people that are already paying a lot for home care that would be able to foot the bill for that extra $100 a month. Then the goal, ironically, is that honestly, what we're learning from folks is there are other programs like PACE and others where, or it could be senior care providers where they are getting covered by insurance, but they're not having to have specific codes. Like the PACE program has the responsibility of providing care into that home and achieving certain outcomes, but it's their discretion how they do it. That actually would probably be our next level. Or so someone who's on like in California, Medi-Cal or Medicaid, or could be a VA program. I think where there's less complexity about doing a clinical study, but just showing that, hey, this could reduce the cost of putting caregivers in the home by X, or having this person, be able to be more independent without having to come into a day facility. So that's the next level. And then the final part we were just having a discussion today with is to pick specific disease states and specific health outcomes, and then do the studies that, the unfortunate term is there can be a code created for that. And so that's something where, we're looking at what are those ones that would then get us a reimbursable code, or hospital and home could be using that for a treatment. So that's honestly where we're learning this ecosystem about which bucket do people fit in. But that's our long-term goal, is to get this to where there could be co-pays enabled for it. And I see Carrie put my email there too, which is fine to contact me too. So.
Hi, it's Deanne out of Las Vegas, and I know you and I are going to end up touching base already.
Okay.
So just some notes on what you were just saying too. The groups that really would be great as far as diagnosis and going after is Parkinson's and ALS.
Okay.
Because they, Parkinson's has the tremors.
Yes.
Really
Yeah.
badly. And so it's very difficult for them to even, hold something, that kind of thing. So, with this robotics, that's amazing. And also ALS. I have that with a lot of my ALS clients as well. And sometimes there's his voice, sometimes it's, mobility with their hands, and that creates a huge problem. And then also, like I have here in the state of Nevada, why I want to connect with you as well on our areas, because not only do they have Medicaid, but we make sure to get funding that is similar to a Medicaid structure that goes above and beyond for those, that aren't falling exactly in the Medicaid parameters. And with that, they don't have as many hoops.
Right. No, that's wonderful. No, we're really eager. Carrie mentioned the connection with you as the good, not to be biased to folks on the west, towards the west, but you're within driving distance. We can load robots in a minivan up and be out there in about like 8 hours. So you're in our first expanded range. Phoenix is there as well as San Diego and
okay, but the deal has to be that I get my own little personal robot. No, I'm just kidding.
That's okay. Whatever it takes. But no,
Can she do my voicemails? I'm just kidding.
No, yeah. So that's right. No, the
just kidding.
No, there's other stuff that we work with.
Does the robot, has it really been perfected to hear and understand people? The reason I ask that, I think I speak very clearly, but I have a heck of a time a lot with Siri understanding me when I ask her. She gets very confused.
Yeah, so we always use third-party products. Like if you look at like Amazon, so Amazon's actually an investor in us, not because I think they like what we're doing to the ecosystem about the future of care. There are, don't quote me on this, I think there are thousands of people that work on Alexa at Amazon. And my understanding is it keeps on getting better every year. Like my co-founder is originally from the Soviet Union and emigrated, in the 90s to the US, and has a very thick Russian accent. And now it gets her, or now he gets him, she gets him. We have Parkinson's. One of the women with Parkinson's, like you were mentioning, Deanne, she got Alexa to understand her. And I think it was a combination of, she had a watch, really motivated person. She had a third-party app running on an Apple Watch that would let her trigger Alexa. And she was controlling her lights and other things with it. But Maureen, yeah, it's ultimately, it's the state of those technologies. And it's why we use a tablet as well, or a touch screen, so that
Good.
people have the choice.
Yeah, because with Parkinson's and ALS, so often the speech goes, you know, they're very hard to hear because it's such
And
a
I-
low.
Yeah, and it may even take
volume.
other things like either a big tablet, or we could even have like a big button that somebody hits, because like you were getting into that, if somebody's in tremors, it's, you know, we have a screen that, you know, a 30-year-old engineer designed to touch. That's not good for someone that's like, you know, that their fine motor skills aren't there. So
Right, they can't get the
um,
hand to work right.
yeah.
Um,
So, but I think longer term, it's like trying to find the tools that people use. Like there was something about this Apple Watch app that the woman with Parkinson's just loved, you know, that she was able to interface with. So,
Well, I think it'll be great, you know, once it can be really utilized by people and somewhat affordable. Although I don't think it's unfortunately going to be affordable to all people.
without that
Yeah.
copay, or without that funding, I think ironically, it's going to be the wealthy and the folks that are on the subsidized programs that'll get it first. And then
Right.
it'll be in the middle that we keep on pushing down. But again, that's where, you know, the volume, that's why the goals are, is that if, as we get out to further and more people, the cost keeps on coming down. So that's our background. So.
But yeah, no, I love the idea. Oh,
No, thank you. And again, if you want to see more and actually see the robot, and we're happy to send you the survey link, or do other stuff. We're just, if we are sharing you the videos of the robot, just don't post those yet on social media. We'll let you know when the time is. That's more likely start of next year when we go live. But right now we're collecting all the user data and things. So cool. So anyone else, other questions, or and feel free to email us later with other issues and things, as well as if there's other organizations that you think of that may be interested in partnering on pilots, just let us know.
Well, thank you. If anyone does have any more questions, you can send them to us or directly to Mike and Carrie, and we'll see if we can get those answered. Can you see why I'm so excited about these guys and their product? And those are my 3 patients that they were referring to in the presentation. Trisha Bell, the one at the very end, is the one that drove us up there. And every time my husband goes there to do her physical therapy, she talks about how much she misses it. So she is ready to be #1 on the list of your first purchasers. But I just wanted to mention real quick, this was part of our professional development series. Next month, we're going to kind of continue this trend. We're having Rosemary Rossetti, who has a universal design test lab in Ohio that she actually lives with. She's wheelchair bound, and she lets students and organizations come into her home and see how they can create the future of universal design. So that's July 28th. I'm really excited to have her. So I hope to see you all there again. And you can check our calendar. We have all sorts of events coming up, from how to create your own DIY social media videos to how to help seniors put their words onto their stories into books for future generations. So hope to see you all at some future events. Thanks again, Mike and Carrie, for everything.
Thank you all for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll see you all next time. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.